We were just talking about whole system methods. If we create a new system and we build it up and configure it and enhance it, add features, functionality, add software applications, and basically make it like a template, we can grab the whole system and replicate it. If we're using virtual machines, we can clone or create a virtual machine appliance. Now, some of you may be saying, well, what about Sysprep? Well, Sysprep actually requires a server. In order for Sysprep to replicate a whole system, it's going to require a server to use. So that's why down here in the server methods, if we take a look in just a minute, you'll see that that Sysprep is listed. There it is, whole system replication, right? So when you decide to use Sysprep with the out-of-box experience and you want to do network installs, that's a server-based method. And it's very powerful, but it's part of the WDS and WSUS. It's like a dynamic duo. This is, if you have WDS and you're using WDS with Sysprep and you have WSUS, that's really sort of like a tipping point. In fact, the last section of this taxonomy, we say that the dynamic duo, the tipping point for deployment efficiency, is installing Windows software update services and WDS with Sysprep, because you're basically doing two servers, but those two servers allow a matter of automation and efficiency that's amazing. So for most organizations, even small organizations, the cost of that modest investment pays for itself in less than a year, based upon the reduction of lost productivity. So whenever you're having to overhaul systems, rebuild systems, anybody that does that and spends a part of their time during the course of a year doing that for an organization, implementing these two machines and getting that going is going to give them a lot more time to do other things that are more important. So in any case, what we want to do is return back to our server methods. You'll see that there's a parallel here. So we have server methods where the OS install image is enhanced, right? And basically WDS uses that image and installs it with Pixie, right? Pre-executable environment. And we're using Slipstream with PowerShell and DISM to embed the updates. So we can do that on the client level. If we're working by hand and we're doing by hand with client machines, we can do this with servers, and then once we have that done, we can push it out over the network. So we've gained some automation and some power there. We still use Slipstream and PowerShell, but any output from slipstreaming updates into an image to improve the image, basically the efficiency and the power increases 100-fold when you can put it on a server with WDS, right? So server methods to install OS enhancements, right? Installed OS enhancements. So what about server automation for operating systems that are already installed? If you take the same idea of taking the MSU updates and you put that on a network file server, you can use scripts and you can use DISM to apply those MSUs. So you can automate that. What you do manually here with MSUs, client by client, you can automate on a server to install the operating systems. But a better way to do that yet is to just install the role, the deployment role for WSUS. So once again, you see these two are like this tipping point, right? This allows you to enhance install media, and this allows you to enhance ongoing updates. And those two are really important. As far as graphical management tools, Windows Admin Center is every bit as important and relevant for server operating systems as it is for client operating systems. Instead of remote desktop, RSAT is the reigning, or I'm sorry, instead of the MMCs, the remote management MMCs, it's RSAT. And Microsoft is asking people to quit using Server Manager and Remote Server Administration Tool. They're retiring that. And the legacy method, except for very old server operating systems, the Microsoft management consoles have been retired except for legacy systems. But you see the parallel there, right? For whole system replication, once you have Sysprep and you combine that with WDS and WSUS, basically you can roll out whole systems, and that's like an order of magnitude more efficient. You can also, if you have a server that manages virtual machines, like a vSphere for VMware or an Hyper-V server for Microsoft, you can clone and you can cluster VMs. And there's something similar in the Linux world. Basically, they have distributions where there's a number of sites that share whole system images, and basically it's very efficient. But globally, tens of thousands of people can download distributions each day. I want you to notice here that PowerShell and DISM is also a part of the server methods family of tools, right? So we see PowerShell on the client level, we see PowerShell on the server method, and then finally on the enterprise level for centralized management and automation, we also see PowerShell with scripting down here. Shell scripts and batch files, right? There is one thing to note about the enterprise methods. There's a lot of money involved. There are dependencies. So System Center Configuration Manager, the Microsoft solution, SolarWinds, right? These centralized management and automation methods are basically dependent on this enterprise infrastructure. If you don't have Microsoft Active Directory, and in turn you don't have DNS implemented, you don't have LDAP, you don't have WSUS and WDS. These are dependencies that have to be in place. These are things that are required in order for the centralized stuff to work. But once again, I want you to see PowerShell is at the enterprise level, and the high end with Fortune 500 companies and large governments. PowerShell is on the automated server level, and PowerShell is also in the middle of the single client, right? So if you learn PowerShell, you've got a lot of tools to work with on any level. That's the thing I want you to know. Among all the methods listed, PowerShell provides the means and methods regardless of the scenario, scale, or the context. No matter how big or how small, if you learn the PowerShell methods, you've got all the bases covered. All right, so how do you use this abridged taxonomy when you're given an OS deployment and support scenario? Well, basically all you have to do is reference the listing we've just covered, and given this scenario, match up the details, right? So if a given scenario requires, here's the first example, work on a single system, a client OS, well, that means we're not doing any of the server and enterprise methods. We're focused on these up here. And then it says using commands without a GUI. Well, we're not using graphical, so WAC would not be an option, but PowerShell is suitable. In the second scenario, centralized management for large organizations. Well, that's SCCM. The only thing that fits for a very large organization that requires centralized management and automation is SCCM or SolarWinds. But it's likely that you'd have to know that there's other required infrastructure. You have to have the DNS, WDS, and WSUS. You do need to know that there are other solutions for enterprise automation. Here's a handy reference that lists some of them. Not all of them may have the same features and functionality. Most of them, well, all of them would include centralized monitoring and SEAM, which is System Event Integration Management. This is where the system logs are all combined. So there's centralized monitoring and log consolidation. All of them have that. Not all of them have management features. Okay, so all of them have monitoring features. Not all of them have management features. This is really important to understand. SCCM and SolarWinds are a comprehensive solution. You can basically do everything you need to do with those two products and some creative PowerShell scripting, right? So whatever SolarWinds lacks, you can do with PowerShell and some PS1, given the rest of the features and functionality that SolarWinds has. Microsoft would prefer you spend your money on them. They'd prefer you standardize. In any case, this concludes our review of the deployment and support best practices taxonomy, right? Just remember you have these main categories and subcategories, and there's a pattern there. You have graphical tools, you have enhancement of install media, you have enhancement of operating systems that are already running and installed, you have whole system replication, that kind of thing, or cloning, right, and clustering. There's a pattern there. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any other questions or comments, feel free to contact me at UVI.